podcast, episode 287. I'm your host, Jamie, and I'm joined by Melly.
You are?
And Stephen.
287.5.
287.5. A little peek behind the curtain there, if you can figure that out. Listen, it's Christmas time. Things are all a bit loosey-goosey. We're approaching the Christmas break, brought forward, obviously, because of a combination of rising COVID numbers and the fact that we're having a Christmas break anyway. Melly, you're shaking your head.
Brought forward to help Celtic, Jamie.
Because everyone hates fans.
Sporting integrity. In the words of Alan, it's weird how Alan McGregor and Chris Boyd are almost interchangeable as two empty-headed knuckle brains of the Rangers variety. Did you see Alan McGregor put forward a well thought out and well considered case? He nearly had me convinced for why we shouldn't bring forward the winter break.
Staunchness.
More or less it was staunchness. I'll do an impression of him. I need to be in the camera because he was videoed over Zoom, so I'm not going to. He just went, I think a big thing sporting integrity in this country, isn't it? So that's all I've heard for the last 5 years, sporting integrity. So I don't think we should have it. No, the game should be played. No one asked him to expand on that, Stephen.
No, of course not. But in many ways, football fans are the easiest crowd in the world, depending on who you support, of course, because I did see an excerpt from that in which I think he's kind of known for this. He gives like really idiotic answers, and Rangers fans act like he's doing it deliberately, like he's one step ahead of everyone, like he's got everyone on strings. So I think he gave an answer that was along the lines of, what's it like keeping so many clean sheets? And he basically said the key to that is not letting goals in. Yeah. And everyone's like, oh, brilliant, big man, absolutely tremendous patter, when really he is just a knucklehead.
Brilliant shagger.
He's just a guy that sounds like he spends all his spare time on follow.
He's a mod.
He's a mod, which he probably does, to be honest with him. Or he's definitely got a burner Twitter account where he just sits raging about Celtic fans all the time. Embarrassing from, is he the captain? He's not the captain of Rangers, but embarrassing from a senior player in the country to come forward with that sort of argument. No brainer, bringing the break forward.
No real debate to be had. We're only moving it forward 1 week after all, our already planned break, and this has been framed as like a Celtic and Rangers thing, which is ludicrous. I know that's kind of the default setting in Scotland. It's either Celtic or it's Rangers. It must benefit someone.
Yes.
If it doesn't benefit everyone, Lord knows it can't possibly benefit everyone like it does, but it's always got to be a Celtic Rangers thing, and this has been framed as a victory for Celtic somehow, and it's honestly ludicrous because Ange Postecoglou was very blunt about it. He doesn't want to play football in front of no fans, because what manager does apart from Rangers manager? Robbie Nielsen said very similar. He said that he doesn't really consider it real football doing it in front of fans. You can tell the intensity's down, so
tearing my hair out, waiting for a chance to speak here. I'm sorry, you're not tearing my hair out at you, Stephen, but you know, every football game in the country is played in a stadium for a reason. Fans are maybe the most important. Without fans, football is crap. I think Jock Dean's
the great man once said.
Get out there.
The stands exist for a reason. We're supposed to be in them cheering the team on. And Rangers, who exist now, Rangers exist in their new and current mode. They exist only to protest against absolutely everything else Scottish football wants. Sponsorship deals, winter breaks, COVID tests. It doesn't matter what it is, Rangers don't want it.
Up to no good as usual.
Yeah. They seem to think that the games should be played with no fans. Now obviously they want to play games with no fans, mainly because what are their two next fixtures?
Celtic away and Aberdeen away.
And they accuse us of shiting ourselves.
yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Again, the thing with this sort of early shutdown, when we seen it before, back when the first lockdown happened, it wasn't really rife throughout players, but it's rife throughout players now. Like basically every team, bar one, have got COVID cases going through their squad, whether it be players or staff. So you can see why, like St Mirren were wanting games called off. There's already been games postponed as well. It just made complete sense to bring it forward, because we got the last week's been a sharp return to reality of what this pandemic's all about. Wednesday night, I was at the Celtic game. Saturday, I'm sitting watching the Celtic game, and it's like two completely different sports. It's terrible. Like, even though Celtic played well in the St Johnstone game and they didn't really play that well in the St Mirren game, when Celtic scored and the commentators making a big goal hits the back of the net describing the goal, it just doesn't feel the same because there's nothing apart from the odd player cheering when you hear it, and it's St Johnstone, the 500 fans. It's pretty pointless. It's just no use, man.
a sharp shart there at
Oh.
the start of that. I don't know if you noticed.
Oh.
It is Christmas. We have all overindulged.
Did you know what you said? Look, Rangers have. Stephen, can I just ask you whilst we're on here, just angle that football shirt just towards the camera a little bit while I'm talking. There we go. Rangers have managed to avoid COVID call-offs, but I'm telling you right now, if they avoid a single COVID call-off after the Loving Cup ceremony, I'm calling BS. That's grown men all drinking out of the same saliva-filled cup.
When is that again? It's the first home game of the new
January,
year.
yeah.
So it is, yeah.
But the weirdest thing that happens in any football team ever, grown men basically taking a wee drink out of a cup and passing it all to each other. And if there's no COVID call-offs after that, then we know they're up to no good. Obviously,
Tradition, Timmy.
yeah, COVID call-offs did affect Celtic's game at St Johnstone. Most of the sort of senior first team players that we'd expect to see playing did have to be off with COVID, but we did manage to see Furuhashi play. We saw Abada play up front. We saw Ange try a new system, 3 at the back. Scales came in. Stephen Welsh came in. You know, we cobbled together a team that won the game, really.
Yeah, we did. And within that, we played quite well. I thought the St Johnstone, terrible. Pitch, abysmal.
Disgrace, man.
Just relegate them for that. That's shocking. You can't say, oh, the weather's been bad. It's not been that bad. But Celtic, we went 3-5-2, and when you see the lineup come out after all the rumours of COVID call-offs after the St Mirren game, where you're like, that team's terrible. If we get COVID call-offs, it will potentially be worse. But having Kyogo and Rogic in there, it just made me feel a wee bit better, because Kyogo missed the game during the week. I just presumed he'd be out at the weekend. Seeing his name in that team sheet, I'm like, you know, we've got a chance of winning, because at one point Rogic will set up Kyogo and there's a chance to score, but didn't quite work out like that. But just having him there made all the difference, and it was sort of Abada and Rogic that stole the headlines, and both of them played really well.
Abada, Stephen, there's been a lot of chat about Abada's wing performances. There's been a lot of chat about Abada's contribution overall, and the back and forth seems to go, if you criticise Abada on the wing, people say, well, look at his numbers are great, and he's scored goals, and he's scored assists and all that sort of stuff.
Scored assists, that's impressive.
Yeah, scored the assists as well, thanks Melly. But the thing about Abada is there a conversation now to be had that his best position, or the place he does his best work, maybe up front?
Let's have it. Let's have that conversation. Yeah, I'm in no doubt that, at least for now, I'm far more comfortable, far more impressed with him through the middle than I am on the wing. I think I've been pretty down on Abada recently, although I acknowledge that he does score goals and he has been getting on the end of chances. He's been very good at that by and large for the most part of the season. He had a little dry patch, but that's going to happen for young players in a new league. But playing through the middle, I think he's been a bit of a revelation, really, compared to his performances on the wing, because I'm trying to take the goals aside, because he did get the double against St Johnstone, but in a way it's kind of too simple to just look at the goals and say, well, he's better there.
Yeah.
But what I'm more looking at is that the positions he takes up, the problems he causes with his movement and his runs in behind, the fact that he seems to show good instincts for it, whether it's coaching, whether it's his own decisions or a bit of both, he arrives in good positions to get on the end of chances. It's a very simple thing to say, but if you are making space in between the width of the posts, you'll probably get in the end of chances that a team like Celtic are going to create.
Yeah.
And he probably would have had more if not for poor crossing for the most part of the last couple of games. Like Juranovic has been terrible at crossing, actually. But I look at all that from Abada and think, well, he's not the whole package as a striker. He's not Luis Suarez or in just yet.
No.
I'm inclined to believe that he gets more right than wrong when it comes to being a centre forward or like a second striker. I look at him on the wing and I think it's the opposite. I think he gets more wrong than right, if that makes any sense. I think he makes a lot of poor decisions out there. And while he might go on to become a good winger, I don't see the attributes there that make me believe that. I don't think...
He does my nutting on the wing, to be honest with you.
That's a better way of putting it, actually, yeah.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think he's actually been quite poor on the wing recently. I'm not even blaming him for it necessarily. He just doesn't seem to have the attributes that make him a good winger. Maybe I'm being harsh there, but I don't think he's particularly good at dribbling. I don't think he's a great crosser. I think see if you pass the ball out to him on the right, I think there's a greater than 50% chance that he'll miscontrol it out of the pitch. I've seen that from several times now.
Does he like taking a man on?
No, it kind of bobbles off him. So you strip all that away, keep it simple, cause some problems with your runs and get on the end of chances. he's done that. He seems to have taken that like a duck to water.
Even when he was on the wing, Melly, some of the goals he scored showed good striker's instinct, coming in at the back post, finding space for himself, anticipating where the ball's going to drop, good movement.
Yeah, that's why I thought like he's got that striker's instinct, but in a wide position. And see if that's the case, that's fine. But in the way Ange plays, what he wants is his wingers getting on the ball and taking players on, being that guy out on the touchline and then causing your team's problems. When Abada does that, he can't do that. So what the problems he causes is when the ball's on the other wing and he gets into the middle or into that back post. And as Stephen's saying, what the good things we've seen about him is his finishing and his instinct as a striker. If he's going to play out wide, he has to be able to take players on. So the same as Jota, but also contribute goals, and he can't do that. Whereas if he's put up front, the strengths Abada has is his finishing, his ability to make runs, his ability to find space in the areas that's going to be dangerous. If you put him up front, he doesn't need to be on the ball taking players on, because Kyogo looks like a brilliant player for Celtic, but he's not dropping deep, skinning 5 players and putting the ball in the back of the net. He's finishing chances, he's making runs off, he's creating space. And that's exactly what Abada does when he's up there as well. So Abada looks better the less he has the ball and the more he has to work on instinct rather than work on his skill and his quality. So we've seen with the 2 finishes, and 2 finishes for 2 goals, but with their keeper and some better finishing from him and some better crossing, he had another good few chances where if he was maybe a bit, I don't know, if he was a bit sharper or he finished a bit better, he could have had more goals. But at the same time, he's getting into these positions and Celtic are creating the chances, and that's what Celtic have been about recently. They've been creating the chances but haven't been quite clinical, and luckily for us, Abada was clinical, because if you take out Abada and Rogic, there wasn't much else getting created despite Celtic playing well. And that's not to say, Celtic are terrible now. It's just because there's literally no players to do this, because we're playing players out of position. Ange hasn't changed from the 4-3-3 all season, but he had to out of necessity at the weekend to try and make things work. And then again, Kyogo went off. So it was a good win, which we desperately needed going into this break.
The thing about Abada is, Stephen, you know, people might think, well, why even wasting your time having the discussion? Because we've got, you know, Kyogo, we've got Giakoumakis, we've got a Jetty, and if you say, well, Abada, what you are now, and we also have a lack of wing options, but if people say, well, what you are now, Abada, is you are our striker. You're being moved to striker, we're changing your position. Would Abada want to find himself 4th choice striker? But looking at the striking options we've got just now, I don't think that would be the case.
No.
We've got Kyogo doing his thing.
Doing his hamstring.
We're removing Abada off of the wing.
We've got Agete still on the books.
Yeah.
What a great song that would be. I think with these performances he's done enough, I would say, to be considered a real viable option for the second most dangerous striker at the club just now. The fact is, Ayete's not got it. He's never going to have it for Celtic. And the brief, I mean, look, as much as we talk about Abada's goals, he's got 10 now. So 10, I mean, regardless of our reservations about his abilities in various positions, he's got 10 goals now. I think Ayete's got 9 in 2 seasons. So he's already outscored him, despite the fact he is a proven so-called central striker, international and all that sort of stuff. So he's already outscored him in a limited number of appearances. So I think he's well ahead of Ayete. Giakoumakis, I no idea, frankly. I've no idea. He's done absolutely nothing so far. He got that goal at home and then get injured again. And again, I think he's close to making his return. But the fact is, we're in January and we've seen next to nothing out of him. And we've seen plenty from Abada that would suggest to me he's, again, just a viable option in there. So I'm perfectly happy to see him through the middle ahead of any of these guys until Giakoumakis proves something, until he shows us something.
It was an important win for Celtic, not only because we dropped points in the game before that, but because the winter break was coming up. These games can always provide a wee bit tricky, and we didn't have fans in the stadium. Now, if you've been tuning into BBC Sports Sound recently, it is the place for razor sharp debate. Now, bear in mind, these guys are probably on 50 or 60 grand a year to go on and talk about football. That's more than we make in a month. Right? Absolutely unbelievable, right? There was a debate about the fans being in stadiums, and I think it was Willie Miller and another guy, and one guy was saying, well, you need to do, you can't have, it's not worth it, these clubs letting the fans in for 500 fans. And Willie Miller was like, well, no, you need to do something to get these fans in. And there was a big hoo-ha about it, a big debate about it. And the guy went, well, look, if you let the fans in, then you're going to have to pay everyone that works in the stadium double time because it's a Boxing Day, then the stewards, then the police. It goes, you can't make that back up, and then you've got to refund the season tickets. You can't make that back up with just 500 people in the stands, to which the other guy just kept going, no, but you need to do something for them. I thought,
how many pies do those 500 people need to buy to break even
yeah,
here?
That's maths like that is how you sink a football club. And during this debate, someone shouted, goal! And there was like a second or two's pause until Richard Gordon, whoever his host, it went, yes, who scored though? And they went, oh, sorry, Wraith Rovers, for example. And then after the game, they had Michael Stewart on. He was probably wearing a suit. I imagine all the time Michael Stewart wears a suit. Oh, yeah, too much.
Even when he's boxing.
Too much Christmas cheer for old Mikey, because what Michael Stewart said is, Celtic really need to look at their defence. Now, Carol Starfelt, he did make an ass of it in that game, and he was thrown to an error or two. He said, but Celtic need to look at their defence, because their defence is woeful. The standard of the defenders is nowhere near the players the rest of the pitch. Stephen Welsh is better than Carol Starfelt. Not taking into consideration that Celtic barely concede any chances in any games ever. Best defensive record in the league. But also, Stephen, what pissed me off the most was they just lumped Carter Vickers in.
Yeah.
They just said the two centre halves are not good enough. What's Carter Vickers? At least start on Starfelt. And then
That was what got me. I'm perfectly willing, and everyone who regularly listens will have heard my staunch defence of Carl Starfelt in recent weeks. I think he's a good player, and I think he's performed well.
He's fine.
Doing his best to make me look like a right tits right enough every time I do it, because he does have a mistake in him. But the thing is, on that debate, with Michael Stewart was sitting here right now, and he's turned down our invitations.
He has.
What? I'm perfectly willing to listen to the argument about Starfelt, even if I don't agree with it. And I don't agree with it, but I do appreciate that he makes mistakes. And from his first couple of appearances, again, we've had this discussion before, first couple of appearances have saddled him with this kind of bomb scare tag, because he looked a bit ropey in his first few games for Celtic. The incident at the weekend will have done nothing for him in that regard. That will only have added to his reputation as a bomb scare. So I'll have that debate, even if the end result is I don't agree with it. But to lump Cameron Carter-Vickers in with this is offensive, quite frankly. It's ludicrous, because you can't just you need to take them as individuals. You can't just broadly tar the defence with the same brush.
Plus, Celtic have a different defence almost every week, so Celtic's defence is awful.
Yeah, and Cameron Carter-Vickers has performed excellently for Celtic. Right, he's as much as the reason I often defend Starfelt is I feel like he's the kind of underdog of the pairing. Right, I feel like I need to stand up for him, because he's the kind of the whipping boy of the two, so to speak.
Yeah.
No such need for Carter Vickers, because he's been great. I can't remember, honestly, I can't remember him having even a troublesome game. I can't remember any real dodgy. There will be some, and I'm sure people can correct me on that, but it doesn't really change my mind that by and large he has had a great start to his Celtic career. I don't think he's made any key mistakes. I don't think he's put Celtic under any pressure or undue danger. I don't think there's been any unforced errors. So quite why he's been lumped in with Starfelt is this absolute ropey defender.
It's what Stephen said a couple of weeks ago. They just decided at some point this season to tar Celtic with the defence's poor brush and just stick with it.
Yeah, because if we're going to do it, Mikey Stewart says, and look at the defence, was the best defence in the league. Yeah, but okay, we'll look into it a bit further. The goal Celtic conceded, where Celtic all over the place, was every defender out of position where they just cut straight open, or did Carl Starfelt just misplace a pass and the guy went in, crossed the ball, and that was it? Shocking pass, but it can happen in a game. To then go on about the defence and go, it's all over the place. We'll get a 4th, 5th choice goalkeeper playing there as well. We've had a makeshift defence because of COVID call-offs. We've had
played 3 at the back for the first time.
Had to go to a back 3. And again, apart from that goal, name another chance St Johnstone had within the game. How many times have we sat here over the last few weeks, few months actually, and said, we barely concede a chance. Joe Hart would be better just getting a deck chair out and sitting there. There's barely any chances Celtic conceded. Well, we have conceded the odd goal here or there. The problem has been being clinical with the chances rather than creating the chances. We're creating them, we're not giving chances away. So looking at the defence, and to look at Carter Vickers as well, Jota and Kyogo have been sensational, absolutely brilliant since they came in. Ange Postecoglou has been a revelation, but Cameron Carter-Vickers has sort of went under the radar. I've never seen a guy come in to Celtic as young as he is, despite him not being 20, 18, 19, 20. He's young in terms of match experience. He hasn't played a lot of matches for the age he is. He's come in and he's looked brilliant. And I'm not just saying brilliant in every game. He's looked steady in every game and he's been brilliant throughout. He's barely made a mistake. And as you say, Stephen, if he has made the odd mistake, there's not been a game where you can go, I made that mistake. It's one mistake a game. The guy has been just steady Eddie, but tremendous. And because we've got all these great attacking players, we sort of forget, like, he looks like he's been there for years. He's come in with a brand new defence into a brand new team. He's not got much experience. He's played beside Beaton, which is hard. Played beside Starfelt, he's played beside Welsh, he's had different fullbacks, he's hit on his third different keeper behind him at the weekend. Nothing phases the guy. He's been brilliant. And see, if it is 6 million, just go and pay it, because you'll no get a better player for less or even more than that.
He's the senior guy in there, despite the fact all the things you've listed are true there, Millie. I think he's 23, but he's one of those guys for whom a lot of it happens now because there's so many players in England. The early part of their career just kind of disappears, really. They go out on a number of nondescript loans and all of a sudden they find themselves at 22, 23 and they haven't established themselves anywhere yet. A comparison I would make is with Boyata.
Yep.
Now, look, Boyata was of a similar age and similar experience level in that he had just bummed around in some, I think it was at Bolton from Man City from memory. Didn't pull up any trees, but he arrived at Celtic. And he went on to be a really good defender, I think, for a time, for maybe a season or in a bit. Boyata, I think, was a really good defender for Celtic. But look how long it took him.
Yeah.
It took him about a year and a half, maybe more, to establish himself in the Celtic team. So to have come from a very similar background to Cameron Carter-Vickers, or for CCV to come from a very similar background to Boyata and just stroll into the team and look as like he's been here for years, it takes some doing, to be honest, because we've had how many defenders have we had over the years who haven't been able to settle at all? Never mind just throws to in. Yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah.
There you go. So, I mean, it's just this really bizarre notion that, you know, when they're analysing the game, there's lots to talk about. There's lots of positives. They don't need to hang their positives. They need to couch everything onto negative. And Starfelt made the mistake and he's been responsible for a few. But this, I thought it was as I said, ridiculous to lump. You know, Celtic really need to look in the centre halves. They just get lumped together as a pairing. So, you know, we've spoke about the negative side. The positive side of the game is Tom Rogic was on fire once again, playing the best football of his Celtic career. Now, Stephen, you said something a couple of months back, because Tom Rogic came into the team, did okay, then dipped off, and we were really
We've seen it before. Yep.
Seen it before. We really wanted him to take these games by the cojones, and you know, really become the guy that we want him to become, take control of the game, really have a strong influence on these matches. You says, well, let's have a look at this come December, January, because Tom drifts in and out of games.
Easy there. Let's see where we're sitting come November, December time. I think we literally had that discussion, didn't we, a few months ago, where we thought, right, great start, but let's see how it goes, because we've been here before with Tom Rogic. But all such fears allayed for me. I think he's, as you say, playing the best football of his career. I find it very difficult to articulate it in any other way than this is the best he's ever looked for Celtic. At various times he's been brilliant for Celtic, but is this the most consistent he's been? Is this the most reliable he's been? And
what do you think it's down to? Do you think it's down to the manager? Do you think it's down to Ange getting the best out of him? Do you think it's the Ange putting players in certain positions that allows Tom Rogic to play in his best position? Do you think it's about having Kyogo up front, who's making the runs that Tom Rogic needs a player to make?
See on that, like, well, it could be all that, but because Celtic have had so many injuries, Tom Rogic has played beside McCarthy, he's played beside Beaton recently, he's played beside McGregor, Turnbull. Everything around Tom Rogic is interchanging. The wingers are changing, the formations even changed, the strikers changed, Kyogo in and out. But Tom Rogic is still playing brilliant. So I don't think it is quite the system or getting players around them, because that's all changed. I think it's just Tom Rogic himself has done this, and as well as the manager as well. If people often say about Tom Rogic, build a team around them, we can't quite do that in this day and age, because if he comes out, then does the whole system fail? What are you smirking at?
Oh, absolutely nothing. I was just checking something. Kind of.
Just some Googling.
Yeah, you caught me giggling.
You look at it smart. So with Tom Rogic, he's doing this himself, I feel, alongside the manager as well, because everything's changed about him. But Tom Rogic is finally, he's consistent. He's playing 90 minutes every week, but also he's added things to his game. Like when you're watching Tom Rogic now, you're not thinking, oh, look, he can do it up at the top end of the park, but he doesn't track back, he doesn't press. He's doing all that. He's very strong on the ball, which we mentioned last week. I think you two were talking about it. He's turning players, but at the same time, he's doing the dirty work in there, which in turn makes his attacking game better, because he's pressing along with the rest of the Celtic team. Celtic are winning the ball back in high positions, and that's where Tom Rogic is at his best. When a team's in transition, you can get the ball to him and get him on the turn. He's brilliant to watch, but he's also, instead of letting Tom Rogic being that number 10 and needing players around him to get him the ball, he's going and finding the ball. He's finding the space, and
so strong in the ball as well. Like this seems to be a new thing he's added to his game.
It's been tremendous, and it's probably down to the manager as well. But he has added a lot to his game, which it probably has always been there. He's just not quite been able to show it. And looking at the second Abada goal, Abada just, it's harder for him to miss there, because everything that Rogic has done is perfection. Picked up the ball, he's played this pass with outside his foot, that Abada, he doesn't even have time to think, will I take a touch, will I take a shot? The only thing Abada can do is place that past the keeper, because it's all set, laid out for him on a plate, and Rogic has just been brilliant. Just practice your shooting, Tom, man.
Yeah, it could do an extra couple of goals here and there, because Abada's shown him the way. After all, he's banging them in. Rogic 2 or 3 I think he's got, so I think he could probably be adding to that, because he is getting chances and passing them up. But the thing with Rogic as well is that
just some show notes for Melly there.
the thing with Rogic as well is it's very similar to what I thought and what we've spoken about with previous players that we've written off and been perfectly willing to let go. Ralston is one of those as well. It's very easy to be like, well, the manager has done this, because that's the very obvious connection to make. New manager comes in, this player gets better. But I think it's also important to acknowledge the player's input in that when that happens. It might seem a dead simple thing to say, but I think it's all very well a manager coming in, but you can't force a player to play the best football of his career. He's not going to do it against his will. I want to leave, and now you've got me playing the best football of my career.
Spot on with the accent.
Absolutely
It's not better than mine.
No, definitely not.
He did want to leave. I mean, to think he could be playing his football in Qatar. Was it Qatar he was off to? And then, he decided to stay and give him one more shot.
Wasted talent.
There's near bit on. Everyone seems to be performing when they're required for Old Ange. It's near bit on came in, captain's performance, scored a goal, good finish.
Captain, leader, legend.
James McCarthy. I thought did quite well in the game as well.
Yeah, I thought the midfield there, when we were doing the big match build up, like Ange, the way he plays, all about the fast flowing dynamic football midfield. The midfield's McCarthy, Beaton and Rogic. That's the complete opposite to what we're looking for. But again, within the system, they played well because everybody knows what they're doing. I thought Beaton, he's coming in games, and while I do think he does slow certain things down with Celtic, within that he is performing well for Near Beaton and for a player in that position. He's one thing I can always say about Beaton when he's in midfield, if things aren't going well, he's not a guy that hides. He'll always be there to get on the ball. I just want him to move it quicker. But in this game, I thought he was good. He started like striding past players a wee bit and taking them on and moving the ball on a bit quicker, which is good. And look, on that pitch, which was an absolute disgrace, Celtic managed to play some decent stuff, and Rogic, Beaton and McCarthy were at the heart of that, because when you're looking at the team, the two wing backs, well, I think Juranovic is a good player and he can usually cross the ball. He will create things. I'm looking at the other side and going, while Scales is tidy, I'm not really seeing much creative out of him, so it's going to be on that midfield to create things and a bad up front to finish them. And luckily we got that, because it could have been a sticky game, but I think the midfield all played well, and even McCarthy again, another 90 minutes. Hopefully that'll psychologically that'll be good for him as well.
On the pitch, Is it too much to say? Am I being too bold? Am I being over the top to say that clubs should have some sort of accountability for that?
Yeah.
Should they be asked about that? Look, what's the deal with the state of your pitch? I know it can't be perfect year round, but at the same time, there might be reasons for it. But they should be asked to give them. Why is your pitch like that?
I hate to come across maybe bureaucratic, right? But you get the feeling that when English football, we watched when we were out on Boxing Day for our annual Christmas night out.
Yeah.
We watched the Chelsea game and the pitch was almost immaculate. Now you're right, okay, Chelsea have obviously got the money that St Johnstone don't or whatever, but you get the feeling that everything for that televised event, the pitch, the lights, the number of cameras, everything was there to make it look good.
Yeah.
And then you come to Scotland and it's like none of that's taken into consideration. And I'm not exaggerating, like none of it. Should there be a standard for the pitch? Could you be all nasal about it? And God knows this SFA love rules. But surely there needs to be a minimum number of blades of grass per square millimetre.
Get Broadfoot on here.
You know,
like
rule book it. You just go out there with a wee square and go, no, that's only got 12 actual bits of grass, the rest is mud. The pitch was absolutely abysmal. And it's not the weather.
No,
because there's pitches within an hour or two's drive of where St Johnstone had their pitch in Perth that are fine. Yeah. So it's just they've just let their pitch go to shit.
That's what I mean. There's no accountability. We were talking about it as well. It wouldn't happen in any other sport. Imagine a basketball game where it's just the Milwaukee Bucks turn up to play a game and it's on concrete. Oh, sorry, we didn't realise we were supposed to play on wood these days. Golf. Would you? We've not cut the grass this week.
Even like lower leagues and amateur football and B team football, there's like this. The pitch is meant to be. That's where the game's played. But you know, we were joking earlier on about the reason that the stands exist is for fans to be in them. Well, that might be the second most important thing. The one most important thing for the game is the surface you play it on.
Yeah, and it's not just Celtic that turn up on this surface and they go, right, Celtic, they play football on this, so let's leave the pitch and just hopefully it's a leveller. The St Johnstone players are inferior, they're not as good quality as Celtic players, so if you make a pitch worse, well, that'll make their players worse, because they were terrible. Like, they were terrible. Looking at that pitch, I was like, right, see if they get relegated, I wouldn't be bothered, because that would be out the ground.
One less pitch you got to worry about.
Yeah, because we're trying to get them 99 problems, but a pitch ain't one. There's so many poor pitches in the Scottish League, and again, that was on Sky Sports. It was free for everyone to watch. Like, hopefully not a lot of people tuned in, because you had a pitch like that, you had no fans, and then you had a team in St Johnstone that just didn't bother to show up either.
Life's a pitch.
Yeah. Anyone get any more?
Anything? No more puns. The winter break has come along, as we discussed. They moved it forward, which is obviously the correct thing to do. It gives Celtic an opportunity to get some players back. Gives us an opportunity also for the January window to come in, and there's some potential signings coming in. Having a look at the squad that we put out against St Johnstone, we could use
7.
We could use 7. We could use reinforcements. We've got Dyson Maeda coming in, Rio Hatate, and Yosuke Ideguchi. Did I do that?
Nailed
okay.
it, I think,
Now,
yeah.
nothing's confirmed, obviously, just heavily rumoured at this point. And obviously, if the players do sign, patreon.com/20minutetims, where we produce extra content, and what we do is we have players that come for Celtic, have them professionally scouted, so we'll give you all the lowdown, what to expect. Obviously you can watch your YouTube videos, but nothing quite beats that professional scouting touch.
Indeed,
so
yep.
we'll have that. Which of those 3 players, Melly, most interests you?
Oh, I think it'd be Hatate or Maeda. I'm not quite sure where Hatate's going to
You're
play.
a tatty, mate. If anyone is.
That would work for the old hips, wouldn't it? I'm not quite sure where he's going to play. He looks like a very versatile player up the left-hand side or in central midfield, but I think Maeda would be the one for me, because I don't usually go by the YouTube videos, but after Kyogo's YouTube video, then I'm coming in and being an absolute genius. If Maeda's anything like that, he is one of the top scorers out there.
I think he finished 2nd top goal scorer in the G League.
Go for the first one then.
Yeah,
What's the point of the 2nd top scorer?
Typical Celtic.
I know. Lowell.
Scouted the wrong player again, haven't we? But if we're looking at Celtic recently, the defence has been fine despite everybody saying it's terrible. Midfield's been okay, but we really need reinforcements in there. But if Celtic could be more clinical up front, because as I was saying, we're not creating chances. Like we've always hear, like the St Mirren game, this low block we struggle to break down. We've been creating plenty of chances, we've just not been clinical. And Jota's been good, Kyogo's been good, but outside of that, Abada's the only other player that's made it to 10 goals this season for Celtic, and despite scoring a lot of goals and looking good going forward, that's pretty poor. Tom Rogic has got 2 goals, McGregor a couple, Turnbull's got about 7. So we need more people contributing goals consistently, and hopefully if Maeda can do that, him, Jota and Kyogo up front, with Abada and Forrest behind that, it's looking a lot better just with 1 or 2 players in. So it just needs somebody up there to be a bit more clinical for me.
I'm intrigued by the Ideguchi link, because that has been the one, to my mind, that's been the most interesting, maybe the most contentious in that part of the world. Those who are ITK, and loads of Celtic fans follow them, is like Dan Orlowitz and a couple of other Japan-based Australian journalists or American journalists that are based over there. It raised a couple of eyebrows, Celtic being linked with him, and it's not because he's a bad player. It's just that it's a kind of I'm not really sure about that one. I think the general
it was the
tone,
move to Leeds that people are worried about.
He has been in Europe before, and it didn't quite work out for him for a number of reasons.
Yeah, see, just on that, it's no, he went to Leeds and was just crap, and they went, he's no good. He had to go out on loan from Leeds to get a work permit. He failed to do that because he went to Spain for one of them and somewhere else, and he got a season-ending injury, so it didn't work out, and didn't work out somewhere else. And then Leeds decided to cut their losses with him, sent him back. But it's another one that he's 23, is he? And he's just sort of established himself as a player, so that's the worry for me.
The general tone I'm getting about it is that, if you get him playing, got a player in there, but not so sure you'll get that player. But that becomes a kind of in Ange we trust thing, because I'm assuming it's him behind this signing. I don't imagine Celtic have gone and scouted these guys.
We signed no one from Japan for decades, and then the minute he arrives in the country, it's our favourite shop. Then
the reaction to it from some people. Again, I'm going off the benefit of only just some reports and some interviews that I've seen. I haven't had the benefit of any scouting reports or anything like that, which we'll have done when the time comes. What I'm getting from it is that it's almost like Maeda, get it. Hatati, understandable. Ideguchi, it's almost like if there was like a Japanese team that was linked with players from Scotland, and we're in for Joe Aribo, we're in for Jota and Stephen O'Donnell. You'd be like, that third one doesn't seem to be quite appropriate there.
He seems to play that centre midfield position, but a bit deeper, which again, you're looking at it, Celtic have options there, not a lot of good ones. Like Soros should be on the way out probably because he's not played at all. Beaton's done well when he's come in there. McCarthy has done okay but can't stay fit, and McGregor's our best option there. So if Ideguchi comes in, does that mean we're going to move McGregor on one? If we're looking at a midfield, I'd more want somebody who is sort of box to box that scores goals to help out Rogic, and will give Turnbull a rest, which he's going to need to do now because he is injured now. If we do bring in Ideguchi, we probably need somebody in there, unless Hatati's going to play that role as well. It's
it is just rumour just now, but it'd be we have rumoured we've been linked with these guys for months now, and one of the I can't remember who it was, but one of the Australian journalists or Japanese based journalists that you said, Stephen, made a very interesting observation a couple of months back. He said, Japanese newspapers aren't in the business of just making up
weird that never catch on
rubbish random transfer stories with no nothing to back them up. They just don't do that over there. They don't chase clicks and stories that way. So if there's a link, then there's more or less something to it. So it'll be interesting to see, and we do need these guys in, especially after the break, because we're going to have, without David Turnbull, who knows what the situation of Jota.
Huge loss that David Turnbull. That'll maybe go under the radar because he's not as big a name as like Jota or Kyogo or any of these other guys that keep getting injured. But David Turnbull's been key this season. He's
played more goals than Jota and Rogic.
Yeah, played virtually every game up until he couldn't play anymore. So that's going to be a huge miss.
We're going to have potentially Jota out. Kyogo and Rogic might be called up on international duty. So important, no fans, So we need these bodies in. We need to get them in early. We did drop points though. We did drop points against St Mirren, and the chat after that game, particularly on our Discord, which is a Patreon sort of chat room for the all-in guys, but on social media as well, there was like a big argument over how important that loss was. Oh, sorry, well, it feels like a loss, but how important those lost points were in the grand scheme of the league. And I personally thought that this is bad, really, really bad. It's a game we should have won. Dropping points at St Mirren is a terrible place to drop points. okay, it's only 6 points, Stephen, but it's something you and I were talking about. It comes down to the probabilities of things. Say we drop points against Rangers in the next game. That next game against Rangers, there's just no option but to win it now. We must win it, because overturning a deficit of 9 points or 7 points or 6 points is going to be very difficult. Not just based on general league play and the amount of times that's happened in the past, but the fact that they don't seem to be dropping points either. It's a tricky situation we've got ourselves in. And when you look at that St Mirren game and the fact that St Mirren had COVID call-offs, not as many as they thought, but the bench was depleted, and I was after it, I'm just like, nah, this is serious. This is well worth talking about now.
I don't want to fall into the trap of speaking like we've already dropped points against Rangers, but I think it is important in the context when we're trying to express.
It's almost winner take all game.
We're trying to express that it's every point's a prisoner at the moment, and every drop point is going to be important, because say we do lose to Rangers, because anything could happen between now and then. Like we're living week to week in Scottish football, just in football in general. We're living week to week. God knows what will happen.
Life, everything changes.
Basically, yeah. So you don't know what's going to happen.
Especially when they're immune to COVID.
Yes, suspiciously immune to COVID. They just don't get it over there.
Did I make my 11 cup joke on this version of the podcast, or on the hour we recorded that I had to go in the bin?
Maybe it's drinking from the 11 cup that gives them some sort of immunity herd immunity. But should we go further points behind, and 6 isn't insurmountable, but it's difficult at the moment because we're not gaining any. We're losing, kind of bit by bit, we're losing ground on it. It then becomes about counting how many games are left and deciding whether you can see them dropping in points in as many games as it's going to take. We had very, very similar circumstances, although very different. A similar conversation in different circumstances, rather, last season. We worked out all the things that need to happen, and slowly but surely all those things were just getting cut out from under us. We need to win every game, go out and lose the next game. We need to beat them in every derby, lose to them. And then so slowly but surely all these things start getting ticked off, and it becomes an impossibility. So it is a must-win, that, because can you see them getting to a certain point where they've maybe drawn 3 games out of the last 16 or 17 games, drawn 3, lost 2? Are Celtic going to win every game? So all these things start coming into play if we don't start gaining ground on them very, very soon. That game is of utmost importance, as if it needs said, but I mean, it's been hammered home by the St Mirren game.
I'm not saying at this point the league's over. That's not what I'm saying. I know people, on the internet tend to take things wrong. Sometimes you're just wrong.
Take it wrong.
Okay. I was going to do, they take it the wrong way. No, sometimes you're just flat wrong, right? Okay. But I'm watching the St Mirren game, and a couple of things annoyed me. A couple of the performance annoyed me. But the end result is we drop points, Melly, and that puts yet more pressure. Like, now, we all agreed, for weeks we've been saying that margin of error is so small that we really can't open up the gap anymore between them and us come that Derby game. Derby game's coming up. It's 6 points. How do you feel?
Well, I think if it was going to be this weekend like it was meant to be, I'd be severely worried because I've not got the players to go out and win the game, I wouldn't say. And
thanks to the rest of Scottish football, by the way.
I sorted
for doing that for us. Cheers, appreciate it.
Just us, of course. But if you're looking at it as a sort of long-term thing, and I know going into this, if you had said going into this January break, whether we'd played Rangers or not, look, you'll be 6 points behind them and you're still in the race, you've won a cup, you go, aye, okay. But we're looking at it now, we're 6 points behind them with 2 home games against them still to come and another game. So you're like, right, well, it's still in Celtic's hands, because if they went and won every game of the rest of the season, they'd win. Now, that's not going to happen, but it is within our hands. The St Mirren one was really disappointing because it was a game you really think Celtic should win, but that's again removing all the context from it. And again, it's not about Celtic didn't not create chances, they just didn't take them. And it's a game again when I'm looking at Celtic going, right, what could we have done different? What could the manager have done different to change that game? And I can't see anything. I
honestly think that's a difficult conversation to have, because there's not many football matches where you can pinpoint what a manager should have done different. They would have. So any game where Celtic lose or drop points, you can go, well, the manager should have done X, because there's no guarantee that even if he did do X, you would have won the game. But what you can do is you can look after the game and you can go, well, a week later he sort of played a different formation, and there was definitely a difference in the set pieces against St Johnstone that I noticed. And
he had Kyogo against St Johnstone, but
for 10 minutes.
But he had him to start the game, which meant he could play a different formation. People always say it, and you say it a lot. Like, the game was there to be won, and I'll go, right, okay, but Sir Alex Ferguson had thousands of games that were there to be won. He didn't go out and win everyone. Pep Guardiola currently is the best manager in the world, in my opinion. He doesn't always find a way to win a game. Sometimes these games happen because all these factors come into it, and all it would have taken for that game, again, was for Celtic to get one goal, and they'd have won the game. The fact is, they didn't. Celtic couldn't get any further forward in that game. Carter Vickers and Welsh were basically on their 18-yard line. Celtic had all the possession, they had the chances, they simply didn't take them. And that's not me just saying, look, these games happen, because you should be able to break teams down. But people will say, I find a way to win the game, and I'm looking at the bench and going, well, it's not as if the manager's sitting with options behind him that he didn't bring on. We brought on Liam Shaw, who's played one game in a dead rubber that against in the Betis game that didn't mean anything. We brought on Juranovic, who's a fullback for Owen Moffat, who's quite simply not ready to play at this level yet. And we brought on...
So why did Moffat start the game then?
What's the other option? Play Juranovic again, a guy that's played basically every game right through. Had a cup final at the weekend, and then bringing on Taylor for Scales. What's the point in that? Well, maybe it's just fresh legs, because there's literally nothing else to do. I'm not looking at the manager and absolving him of it, but this is what I'm saying. It's not as if he's got a big tall striker that he can bring on. It's not as if he's got another attacking option where we can go two up front. It's not as if he's got a winger there that can bring on and we can go, right, we'll play this wide, play two number 10s, play two strikers. There was no options for the manager there, so it's down to the players out on the pitch to win the game playing the way they're playing, and we just couldn't do it.
I just think some of the delivery for set pieces is awful. In these games,
it's not in the manager, but
right. Okay, so I don't want to get into a full blown argument, but what you're saying right now, I feel, could be attributed to any manager that loses any game of football. So if he loses against Rangers, can we just say, he tried his best? We don't have the we've lost. You could say that about Ronnie Dyer. He had he used the best players he had. Neil, you need to look at the games and go, right, well, where could the manager have done better? We can't. I just don't think we can walk away from dropping points to St Mirren in a tight title race and just go, we tried everything we could, but sometimes you don't win games. It was cold, the players needed it. You need to look at these games and go, the manager should have done more. If he's depleted, if he's without a striker, for talking sake, now the manager could have done this, we don't know. If he's without a striker, do you say, right, you know what, I know we normally attribute 10% or 20% of playing time onto attacking set pieces, but Kyogo's injured, Yakimakis isn't. We're going to have to spend 80% of our training time on set pieces here, because we're going to have to really utilise those. And there are teams that exist in this league and in football who get wins principally off of the performances of set pieces. Whereas we had 16 corners in that game, and the delivery was terrible for some of them. I think we might have got one shot or two on target for the back of the corners. He knows he's going to be without his strikers. Well, as you say, you own Moffat's not good enough, right? So you start Juranovic, and then if Juranovic burns out, then you bring Owen Moffat on. There's different things you can do within the game. The way we lined up in the game, could they have made subtle changes to get the better of it? I think there is always a way, 9 times out of 10, depending on who the opponent is, for that Celtic team that took to the pitch to win games, especially against St Mirren.
The players are poor, but say you start Juranovic and he goes off injured because maybe he's red flagged and he's played too many games within a certain amount of time. We don't know the ins and outs of it. The 16 corners, yes, a delivery from set pieces is poor. It does my head in. But from 4 or 5 I've seen Abada take, he didn't get it past the front man. What can the manager possibly do there about that?
He needs to stop Abada taking corners. And moving away from the manager for a wee bit, Stephen, some of the player performances were really, really poor. I'm starting to look at Mikey Johnson and think to myself, he's been as fair as I possibly can. I want to be Mikey Johnson. I want to say to Mikey Johnson, it's not too late for you, because look, Tony Ralston made a decision this season that he wanted to be a Celtic player. Tony Ralston worked hard, knuckled down, and made the decision he wanted to be a Celtic player. You need to make the same decision, because whatever you're doing just now, your career's you're not going to be a Celtic player for very much longer.
Well, Mikey Johnson's a good example for this game, because I think he probably had the best chance, maybe one or two. Two good chances. One was quite early on, but in fairness, he worked the ball in off the left and hit the shot straight at the keeper. He had another chance later on, I think.
Half volley sort of thing.
Yeah, that's right. But Mikey, I can sense a lot of people getting fed up with Mikey Johnson, and I understand that, because quite simply, he's been here for ages now, and through no fault of his own. Well, not entirely, not his fault, but he gets injured quite a lot. That's not something he's doing deliberately. I mean, I'm sure we'd all love to have better knees, but it's simply not. It's not a choice you can make. So he has been injured a lot, but I think I do understand that if you've got a player in front of you who's basically not really done anything for about 5 seasons or whatever.
He made his debut 4.5 years ago.
Yeah, so he's been around a long time, and he's only made, I think, about 75, 77 first-team appearances, which is not a lot. I had to look into a couple of similarly aged players. Ayer is a year older than him, granted, but he's made something like 250 career first-team appearances. So this is just to illustrate just how far behind he is in his development, Mikey Johnson, and I can tell that people are getting sick of him. I've said on a podcast very recently that I see it happening for him. To be quite frank, I just don't know if I can ever see him being a kind of standout Celtic player. And it doesn't need to be that. It could just be part of the squad and contributing. But I think it's getting towards that kind of shit or get off the pot.
Those are the sort of games he has to contribute.
Well, that's exactly
it's
my
what
point.
Ange said a couple of weeks ago. He goes, I can't construct chances for Mikey Johnson. Now, I don't know if he said this, to give Mikey Johnson a bit up the arse or whatever. He goes, I can't construct chances for Mikey Johnson. He trains and then he gets opportunities and he needs to take it. And
something else on Mikey Johnson, it kind of feeds back into the conversation you two just had without me as well on this, about the St Mirren game and the manager and how much he can do and how much responsibility the players have. I don't want to put this entirely on Mikey Johnson, but it's sometimes the players have got to make something happen regardless of the manager's instructions and systems. It can't be always about that. You look at, just for example, David Turnbull's recent goal where Callum McGregor clipped it through to him, took a touch over the keeper, did a pirouette and knocked it over the line. Right, that's nothing to do with systems, right? That's improvisation from the players. Ultimately, players know how to score goals, regardless of what they've been sent out to do. The manager only furnishes them with what his ideas for the best way of creating chances is. Right, we'll give them some set scenarios. This is the best way to create cutbacks. This is the best way to create angles. If you make, examples like that, but he can't put the ball over the line for them. He's not standing there with a control pad. The players have the responsibility to score the goals at the end of the day, and they're all capable of doing that. They just didn't. They created chances and passed them up for whatever reason. So where I fall back to Mikey Johnson on this is that we kind of need to be seen. I don't mean to place the entire game on his shoulders.
Far from it, aye.
That's very unfair, but ultimately he's a Celtic player, he's a Celtic winger, he's a long-established Celtic winger. Kind of needs to start making things happen. I'm not just talking about that game, but
I mean, look at the stick we give Abada. He's younger than Mikey Johnson. He's been here a shorter period of time. He's contributing way more.
Yeah, exactly. So I just mean we've got to see. So this is why I understand that people are just getting fed up with the guy, and he was getting pelters after that game because he didn't really turn it on. He didn't really produce much in that game, and I think people were just kind of reached the end of the rope, and it has been years. In fairness,
the thing that got me about that game is I don't want to keep harping on about these set pieces, but you look to the squad, it's littered with players that are over 6 foot for the first time in God knows how long, but we don't seem to be utilising that.
Starfelt missed a couple of headers, didn't he? Again, these are the chances that are being created that aren't being scored at the end of the day.
That boy Starfelt again.
See, just on Mikey Johnson as well, I'm trying to keep defending him here, but at the same time I'm thinking it's getting harder and harder. And when you say about Christopher Ayer, who's a year older than him, right, fair enough, but he's a completely different build, so it's not a very fair comparison. But if you're wanting to compare him to somebody a wee bit more in his position, you'd say James Forrest, and I keep saying it, he didn't establish himself till he was in his mid-20s with Celtic. But at the same time, they're kind of on the same trajectory. So if Mikey Johnson was to become good and a sort of established first team player in the next couple of years, long term in his career, it's probably going to go the same way as James Forrest, in that the injuries are going to catch up on him as well further down the line. So with Mikey Johnson, when they danced inside, I was behind that goal for the early chance he had, and I thought it was net bound the whole way, but their keeper actually did play well. He pulled off a good save from Beaton's free kick as well. If I had it in, I think you'll just see a completely different Mikey Johnson after that, because that lifts the weight of the world from his shoulders. And then after every time he doesn't do something, there's maybe not that groan from the crowd. So maybe no crowds will help him. But it's another game that's sort of passed him by, where That's another chance for you, mate. You're going to run out of them if Celtic bring in these players.
He's not scored for 2 years.
Yeah.
That must be eating away at him as well.
And if you're saying the best Mikey Johnson ever can hope to achieve is becoming James Forrest, then
That's not bad.
Might as well sell him the new, man. Jesus Christ.
Look at his medal holder.
Well, that's true, but I just mean contribution-wise. Look, I think the thing that frustrates us about Mikey Johnson is, as a young player, they show glimpses of it.
Yeah.
You know, people got on board with it. It's not like we've thought, oh, Mikey Johnson's rotten and he's always been rotten. It's like, okay, you're nearly there. Come on, do it. Come on. And he's just never really hit his stride. And
Managers see something as well. He's consistently played when available. He's consistently played for several managers for Celtic now. Yeah.
So Celtic got into the break with the rearranged fixtures. Next up is Hibs on a Monday. Is that on a Monday, the 17th of January? So that we'll need to rearrange our podcast again. Absolutely, we can go out in the piss on that night before then. There we go.
Taking liberties.
Party time. Look, I just want to take a second, if you're still listening, to promote our Patreon. The numbers on Patreon are really good. We've got more people than ever supporting us on Patreon, and we really appreciate it. If you like what we do and you want to support the podcast, and if you want some extra content, including match reactions, pre-match, and Celtic history, and we're doing some interesting stuff next month during the break, patreon.com/20minutetims, and you can support us from anywhere about £2 a month. It works out. It's really super cheap. If you're watching this on YouTube, you will see that we're close to about 3,000 subscribers. Not huge in terms of Celtic channels, but still decent numbers for us. And the majority of people that watch this aren't subscribed, so if you can subscribe us, it really helps the algorithm and lets other Celtic fans find this video and all that sort of stuff. Melly, any final thoughts?
No.
Stephen, perfect. Any final thoughts?
Not really. No, just to say,
just want to wish the listeners a happy new year.
Exactly, happy new year when it comes and all that. What's your cut off, by the way? Remember, every day obsessed with wishing everyone happy new year.
Still shaking hands and kissing babies in March,
making everybody feel extremely awkward. I've bought you something.
I mean, when's the next home game? We probably won't
17th.
Won't be at the Hibs game. On the 17th of January. Fans might not be at the Rangers game the 2nd of February, so the next game is Bodo Glint on the 17th of Feb. Potentially being the ground then, so I'll be saying Happy New Year and Merry Christmas to all the guys that sit around me at the end of February. That's what I'll be doing. And on that, Happy New Year when it comes. Merry Christmas for the Christmas that passed. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for everyone that joins us on Patreon. But most of all, thanks for listening and watching.